Reality Check with Craig Price.
Oh, right, sorry.
I'm an idiot.
4 minutes in and I'm already wrong.
I'm like a monkey. Hello, look at me! Craig, shut up.
Hey, I need you guys to do these things.
You're like a beautiful mind. I'm more like Forrest Gump. So it's... Welcome to Reality Check with Craig Price. We got a great show for you today. We've got Eliz Greene on the show, and I brought Eliz on not because she's going to talk to us about the reality of certain speaking situations or a specific business or a specific profession, but she's going to talk about a situation that was very real to her and is something that we should probably be much more aware of. She is a heart health specialist, and that is because her heart made her that way. And we'll get into more detail with that, but I think she's a great person to get to know. I think there's a major epidemic in this country about health, and especially with heart and weight-related issues. I mean, I find myself, I'm in that same situation. People look at me and they don't see that I'm overweight, but I'm about 15, 20 pounds higher than I should be. I've got the high end of normal cholesterol. I'm right at that point where it's a couple points higher, and I'm no longer in the normal, I'm in an issue. So I've got to watch my weight. I've got to watch what I eat. I don't do a very good job of it. My wife helps me out as best she can to, points out what I should and should not be eating, but it's hard because there's things like bacon, and there's things like ice cream, and there's things like bacon-flavored ice cream. There's things in the world that you want to try, that you want to eat, and they're horrible for you, and yet we still do it. And so it's a constant struggle for a lot of people. I think it's important that every once in a while you hear about these stories of the people you wouldn't expect to have heart attacks to be having heart attacks. It could happen to anyone, any one of us at any moment, especially the condition most Americans are in, could drop, could have a heart attack, could have a medical issue. It doesn't have to be a heart attack. It could be any kind of things. And so I think it's important that every once in a while you bring in somebody just as a reminder, just as an example of, what to do and how to recover from it, and maybe make it a little more relevant, make it more real, make it a reality that you don't necessarily think about, but you should be. So that's why I brought Eliz Greene on. She's also just a great person in general. She's a real nice person, has been very helpful to me. And so I want to bring you one of my friends, Eliz Greene.
So I do have it on my laptop.
Good.
The actual video.
Because I want to see it, because all I saw was Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah.
That movie sucked.
Well, and for a women's heart health message, kind of an interesting choice.
Shoot heart attacks
in
the heart.
I didn't understand what that was about, but they didn't ask me about the movie choice, so.
No, but it just seems odd.
But the three movies were Forrest Gump.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, that's an
uplifting story. I cry every time I see Forrest Gump.
The Shooter, which and The Patriot.
Well, The Patriot's another one. That's a little too... a bleeding heart patriot? I don't really know.
Well, and they're sort of male-oriented, The Shooter and
Forrest Gump. That's why I think Forrest Gump would have been best.
Yeah,
because
and that's the one they led the month off with, which was a good choice. But,
okay. For those of you who don't know, I'm here with Eliz Greene. Eliz Greene helped me tremendously with my book. So if you did not like my book, it's not her fault. And if you did like my book, some of that is because of her. You helped edit it. You gave me some suggestions. You told me when I was horrible and when things were good. And I prefer people tell me when things are bad so I can learn. Right. Because I'm a miserable, negative guy. Though I'm not really miserable. That's the thing that always surprises people when I talk about it. It's like, no, I'm negative, but I'm not miserable.
No, you're a happy negative.
And in fact, more people get upset that I'm not upset because I'm negative.
Right.
They're like, you're negative. Why are you so happy? I'm like, because I'm happy. But I just think everything's going to hell. But I think everything's going to hell, and I'm okay with that. And so, Eliz has been a speaker for how long? Have you been a speaker?
Oh gosh, it's been 6 years now.
6 years, and it was not a planned thing.
It was not at all my plan.
It wasn't your big goal, because you had two things happen to you at the same time.
I did.
Both things I would never want to happen to me at any moment, and that would be a heart attack and twins.
Correct.
At the same time.
At the same time.
So tell me, what were you doing before you even had before you were in with child, or I guess you weren't with child, you were with children.
With children, yes. Yeah. Well, for a brief period of time, I thought I was with child, and then quickly found out I was with children.
Yeah, well, but before that,
before that, I was a dance teacher and a choreographer.
Okay, because you are a skinny person. You definitely have a dancer's body.
Thank you.
No, because I knew a ballerina in Boston, and she was skinny. I mean, you got the wiry frame. It's
right.
You can definitely move and hit people if you have to.
Right.
From a distance. I mean, you can launch across the room and whack, she's there.
So yeah.
So you were doing dance.
I was doing dance and teaching and
this was it where?
In Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Okay. Are you a native Wisconsin?
I'm not. I grew up in Minnesota.
Oh, well, that's the same thing.
It's not.
It's the same thing to the rest of the country.
Not at all the same thing.
Different types of cheese.
But I went to school in Madison and met my husband in college.
Okay.
So, and then after he graduated from law school, we moved to Milwaukee.
Okay. So and then off you went. You were dancing.
Dancing.
And then one day you went, hey, wait a second. This leotard is looking a little stretched.
Well, actually, we spent 5 years going through infertility.
Oh, so
this was a very long journey just to even get to be pregnant, and then we find out that it's twins, which was one of those days where the earth sort of tips on a different axis, and you're like, oh, but okay, that's going to be weird.
But I don't. I mean, all I know about infertility procedures are from what I see on TV. But almost every time someone has more than 3.
Well,
it's because they had the fertility. I mean, almost no one ever has natural septuplets. So to have twins, I mean, there's been a case maybe, but rarely are natural septuplets.
Right.
It's one of those things where you're trying.
Well, and they try to increase your odds.
Right.
That's the deal. And we knew that there.
Put a dozen eggs in there, please, and then boom, maybe 1 or 2 will come through.
Yeah,
I'm sure it's more complicated than that.
Yes, and we didn't
She's
fortunately
like, I
have to go.
spent $10,000. It's more important than this.
Well, we fortunately didn't have to go all the way to in vitro, but we knew that there was a chance that there could have been 3, so we were sort of relieved that it was only 2.
See, that's what I mean. I mean, you kind of go in, don't they kind of tell you that the odds are it's not going to be just 1?
Well, but it had, we had done the same thing.
Yeah, but it's like all or nothing.
And nothing.
Right.
So we were pretty excited.
Well, good. Well, of course you're trying.
Yeah.
That's the goal. You've reached your goal.
And
actually, you doubled your output.
We did. And my husband really only wanted to go through pregnancy with me once, and I wanted 2 kids, so it was perfect.
Oh, this is all timing. So there you are, and you're now someone your size, because you're not very tall.
No.
You don't have a lot of meat on you, so to speak. I don't mean
True.
to get all talking about you, but you're just a slight.
Little person.
You're a slight, short person.
Yes.
We love you still, but you're still slight and short. But I can't imagine twins. How big did you get?
Well, I gained 80 pounds.
Wow, that's like doubled your weight.
Well, not quite, but it was close.
What, you 93 pounds?
A little bit more than that.
Yeah, but
and I was on some sort of bed rest from the time I was about 3 months pregnant because I was big.
At 3 months?
Yeah.
At 3 months?
At 3 months. And now I only went to 7 months.
Oh, that's right.
So
because the man upstairs said, "Hey, it's time."
It's time. In many ways, and so I remember standing in line at the return line at Target, and I was.
Isn't it always at the return line in Target?
5 months pregnant.
Okay.
And it was hot, and this lovely little old lady came up and patted my arm and said, "Oh, honey, you're too close to your due date to be out in this heat." And I'm like, I have 4 more months. Just like,
oh, that's like when you're not pregnant and someone goes, "When are you due?"
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So,
and for someone in dancing where, weight is a big deal, so you're constantly trying to stay thin and be healthy and do that, to be that big must have been a weird transition.
Well, and I had thought that I would be one of those women who just worked right up to, the day that she gave birth, and then the babies would come in the little strollers or the bassinets, and I'd go right back to working.
Like Bill Cosby used to say, just in the fields and wacko, and then, hey, we're in the fields and the baby's in the fields. And
that is not how it worked out. And I ended up, when I was 6 months pregnant, going into the hospital in preterm labor, and that's where I stayed for another month.
In labor?
In preterm
labor.
Okay. So, I was in the beginning stages of labor for a month. So I would contract, 5 times an hour was fine, 6 times an hour was worrisome, 7 times an hour they had to do something about it.
Oh, no. Okay.
So that was how I lived for a month, and that's where I was on November 12th, 2000, when I started not to feel so well.
Like what? Because, I always hear about when people have a stroke, and you did not have a stroke, you had a heart attack.
I had a heart attack.
But, they always talk about, it just feels like a heavy weight.
Well, men's and women's symptoms are different.
Oh, see that. This is important to know.
And men have that sort of typical TV movie, heavy chest, clutching their chest, their arm goes numb.
Coming.
Yeah,
And boom.
Exactly, yeah. And women don't have the same sort of symptoms. We often have much more subtle symptoms.
Because women are much more nuanced.
That's right. But mine really started feeling like heartburn.
Okay.
And I was on full bed rest, which meant that I ate laying down. So I had
which is going to cause a problem anyways.
All the time.
Yeah,
so that wasn't really surprising. And if I was good and I wasn't contracting, I got to sit in the shower and take a shower.
Woohoo!
And well, it was good. I got to sit upright.
Yeah.
And that's where I was when it started. And so I started having the sort of weird heartburn feeling. And I went back and called for the nurse after I got out of the shower and said, can I have an acid?
Because you're actually at the hospital for the entire month.
Right. And then I went back and I was combing out my hair, and I had pretty long hair at the time. And by the time I got it back into a ponytail, that pain had become so intense that I was sort of doubled over.
Which is hard to do when you've got...
Yeah.
There
was not a lot of space for doubling.
You were quartered over.
Yes, true. I was just slightly leaning. And I started to throw up, which is a big sign. Okay. And it wasn't because my stomach was upset. It was like weird. Like, holy man, what is going on? And I had cold sweats and I was shaking, and I knew at that very moment that there was something incredibly wrong.
The vomiting and the pain in the chest was a little clue?
Yeah.
I would have thought that was a major thing.
And I think women in particular, we really know.
Well,
when there's something wrong. We oftentimes choose to sort of ignore it, but we really know.
I find women are much more in tune with their bodies than men. Guys, I come from the Bag, New Hampshire, and I come from a unique experience because of my culture. I'm not Christian Science, but Mary Baker Eddy, the inventor of Christian Science, is from my hometown.
Okay.
Which means that's kind of a culture. It's kind of a mindset. It doesn't mean they all are Christian Scientists at all. It just means that no one goes to the hospital, especially men. No one goes to the hospital until it's the last time they go to the hospital.
Right.
They're 68 years old. This happened to my grandfather. He was 78 years old, and he was on his motorcycle with his girlfriend. This is true. He was on his motorcycle with his girlfriend, and he couldn't keep the bike up, and that was his first clue. And so 6 months later, I think he had something else that wasn't making him feel good, and so he went to the hospital for the first time probably in 48 or 49 years. They found a hole in his heart. They found a lemon-sized tumor in his brain that he'd probably have his entire life, and within a week he was dead.
Wow. Which
kind of tells you, hey, maybe I shouldn't go to the hospital.
Right.
So I think that's the mentality a lot of men have, which is why it's kind of, women are much more in tune because you go to the doctor, you go to the OBGYN, right. You feel like if something's wrong, you do go to the doctors. You are more in tune.
Although women with heart issues tend to ignore it.
Because they just don't know what it is.
Well,
or it has
and they
different
don't
symptoms.
want to be a bother because it is so
that's
subtle.
My mom.
They don't want to be a bother. They don't want to be embarrassed about going in and being told
making a fuss.
It's gas.
Oh yeah, making a fuss. My mom's just like that. Oh, right. I don't know. I'm okay. It's like,
now, you got a broken leg. Okay.
It hurts. It's okay.
Well, right.
I'll be okay. Just let me sit here for a bit. That's my mom's one. Whenever she's not feeling, just let me sit here for a bit. And it's like, well, if you need to go to the doctors, you got to go to the doctors.
So, and that's the problem. The problem, particularly for women, is if they don't go right away and they don't get help, that can be deadly.
Well, sure.
Because oftentimes the first symptom that a woman has of a heart attack is dropping dead.
Yeah, that's not a good sign.
No. So, from start to finish, my heart attack, from the time that I started having that heartburn feeling to when my heart stopped, was 11 minutes.
Wow.
So, had I been home.
No, you would have been done.
Yeah.
You can't
even if I would have figured out, this is a problem.
911 doesn't come in 11 minutes.
No.
Oh, man.
So I was very lucky that that's where I was.
Wow,
I was very lucky that the nurses who came to help me on my second call walked in and said, oh, my gosh. And they called everybody. So there were people come into my room to help me before my heart stopped. So it was good.
Oh, I couldn't imagine
great.
a better place.
And I had wonderful, wonderful people to help me. But I had the full-blown, I had CPR. They used the defibrillator on me.
They did that even with the. I mean, obviously they have to try to save your life. But when you're pregnant, aren't they concerned?
There was a somewhat heated discussion between my high-risk OBGYN and the cardiologist about whether or not he could shock me. And my OBGYN was convinced and convincing that the babies would be fine. And she was right. And they shocked me just once. It usually doesn't work on the first time, but I came back around.
It's like an old car.
Yeah.
It doesn't usually start the first time,
Yeah.
so you got to let it crank a couple times. But
So,
you again, very lucky there.
Very, very lucky.
You got a string of. I mean, you love luck. Of course, it's a horrible thing. Everyone's like, "Oh, you were so lucky." I always think like when the plane crashes, it's a miracle that one person survived. Well, the other 230 people don't think it's a miracle.
Right. Well, and I often say that other than having the heart attack, everything went my way that day.
It sounds like it.
It absolutely did. The cardiologist that was able to make it to my room like seconds after my heart stopped was in the hospital because he had a cancellation. So his whole team is in the hospital.
Just hanging out.
Yeah, they're like, well, they were going to do...
Yeah, I really wish some woman would have a heart attack right now. I got nothing to do.
So, and there you go. And my high-risk OBGYN happened to be at the nurse's station right then.
And normally...
On a Sunday
Normally
morning.
they'd be home or something.
Right, on
Wow.
a Sunday morning. She just decided to do her rounds later. And the cardiac surgeon who saved my life was doing paperwork in his office.
So this all happened on a Sunday, so that's like the worst day to have it.
Yeah, usually you could, bowl down the...
And what month was it?
In November.
Oh, so the Packers must have been out of town.
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know.
You should look that up, because I bet that'd be a great addition to your story.
That's interesting. I should
It's
look
like
that
the
up.
Packers had an away game, so a lot of people were just hanging out that day.
Well, it was
and they played
right-
earlier in the day.
It was right after the 2000 election.
Oh, okay.
So there was all of this hoopla over
who's going to be
president.
Right.
And
yeah, but that doesn't take up a Sunday. That took up
No,
2 months, but I mean,
yeah.
they don't care if the Packers are on; they're going for it.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's true.
So you had they obviously things. What actually happened to your heart? Because you had from what I understand, didn't you have some kind of major damage that was unusual?
Well, I had something called a spontaneous dissection.
That's what I was going to say dissection, but I couldn't remember the spontaneous part.
Right.
Because a planned dissection doesn't really happen. Does it?
True. And what they believed happened is the hormones that are in the body to soften everything up for birth softened the inside lining of my cardiac artery. The pressure of pumping all the blood for me and the babies caused the inside lining to sort of shear away, and that fell across the opening of the artery like a trap door.
At this point, I should warn you, if you're eating lunch, you should probably put it down for a moment.
But that stopped the blood, and that's what ultimately caused the heart attack. And I did have damage in a small part of my heart that doesn't beat anymore at the tip.
So it just it's like a dead nerve kind of situation?
It's like a dead muscle.
Well, I mean, I understand, but I mean,
Yeah.
that muscle, it doesn't do anything.
Yeah, it's like kind of like an atrophied muscle, I guess.
Okay, it's on permanent disability.
It is in permanent disability. However, I've done the work to
Compensate.
Compensate. So my heart works as well as a woman my age who hasn't had a heart attack.
Well, I'm sure, because I know that what you speak on and how you live your life, you're probably in better shape than most people your age anyways.
I certainly try.
Yeah, I know. That's what I mean. You're making the attempt, at least, is what I'm saying.
Right.
I mean, since there's an obesity problem in America, I'm pretty sure, on average, you're about half the weight of a normal, average American woman at this point.
Yes.
Sadly.
Yes.
So, there you go. You had the deal. Now, what happens next is odd to me, because I never understand how this happens.
Okay.
Something weird happens to somebody somewhere.
Right.
And this is obviously
and
weird.
you got
and the
this
next thing you
strange
know,
story.
And the next thing you know, it's in the news all over it. And and in my mind, somebody's got to be contacting the media for that.
Okay.
And I want to know, because I
How
know
did that
you're
happen?
not a kind of person that would want this kind of attention.
I didn't send out a press release.
So how does that happen? Because like I said, you see someone get trapped down a well, or somebody like that recently in the news. When there was a Mexican immigrant who there was a cockfight, and the chicken killed him.
Oh dear.
Because what they do is they put razor blades on the legs.
Oh dear.
And it accidentally kicked him in the jugular, and he's dead, which is good because he shouldn't be cockfighting.
Right.
A horrible PTA moment. That's, revenge is mine. Get the chicken. So, but that makes the news. So
Right.
somebody has to go to the news because
Say, can you believe what happened over here?
this illegal cockfight killed this man.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I'm
Right.
sure his family are going, don't tell him he died by cockfight. Tell him he died, he fell on a lawnmower.
Right.
You know, because that sounds horrible. So how did your story hit the news?
Well, when I had my heart attack, in the room right next to me was a respiratory therapist who had come to draw some blood. And he saw what was happening and got a mask on me right away. So he's one of the reasons that I still have brain function. He went down to his colleague after that had happened and said,
Oh my God,
you will not believe. And the whole hospital, I understand, because I wasn't really there, was in a
defibrillator
state,
took care of that.
Right. Was in this sort of state of shock that day. So
Well, I would imagine this is not a normal situation for a hospital.
No. Well, and my cardiologist, who has been very generous about sharing with me what that experience was like for him, he's like, that is the very last place he wants to be. In a fully coding, that means I didn't have a pulse and I wasn't breathing, pregnant woman.
Yeah,
That's not good.
Literally, the bad trifecta could happen. All three of you could get lost.
Exactly.
And that is a worst case scenario.
Well, and he walked in to find the OBGYN with a scalpel in her hand, trying to make the decision about, is she going to get the babies?
Oh, gee.
So that's where we were. So that is, they're all traumatized.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Traumatized by this whole thing. So he goes down to talk to his fellow respiratory therapist. She goes home at the end of the day and tells her husband about it. Well, her husband works for the newspaper.
That's the guy.
And he's a columnist. And so maybe 3 or 4 days later, when it starts to look like everything's going to work out really, really well.
Yeah, they don't like to wait. They like to wait until everything works out before they tell a great story. Because if you died, it would be a sad story.
Just be a sad
and especially
story.
if you died and the babies died.
That's not going to be a good story.
If the babies lived, it still might be okay.
Yeah,
no, I love you very much. You're
yeah.
a wonderful person. But I think if that had happened and the babies had survived, it would be a story of the survival of these two small, beautiful children.
Yeah, but I don't think the hospital would have promoted that story.
I don't think they would promote any of the stories.
Yeah. But so a couple of days later, the newspaper columnist contacts the hospital and says, I heard what happened. Do you think that they'd be willing to share the story? Now, the hospital thinks, this is great.
We saved lives, we did this, we did that.
Well, it's the baby hospital.
Yeah, no, I mean.
But they're also a fantastic cardiac hospital. For them, it's this beautiful marketing.
Oh, my God, it's the jackpot.
Yeah, right. So we say, sure.
Okay.
Absolutely. He comes and interviews, took a picture.
Nice enough guy?
Oh, yeah. Really nice guy. Yeah. And just very, very caring of us. And so it comes out the Wednesday before Thanksgiving.
Oh, sure. The holidays. That's
right.
a great
So it's a perfect,
yeah.
Thanksgiving story.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's like,
They put little
and it
program hats
really
on the
was,
kids.
it really was that sort of, mom gives thanks sort of story. It gets picked up by AP.
Mm-hmm.
It goes out on the CNN news ticker. It goes everywhere.
Well, if it's on the CNN ticker, that's not good for anybody. Well, I mean,
So
you're going to get a lot of publicity that way.
Our birth announcement, CNN news ticker, because we had not told a lot of people because we were so caught up in everything else that had happened. A few people knew that the girls had been born.
So how much time after the event, we'll call it the event.
The event.
That you still hadn't told people, but the CNN
Well,
because
we
you're making it sound like it was
people,
like 2 days later.
Right. No, the CNN thing happened 10 days later.
Okay, so it's still relatively soon.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was still in the hospital.
So you're going to be in the hospital for a while, weren't you?
Right. Just 10 days.
That's it.
So it came out the day
that
I
is a
came
good
home.
hospital. What's the name of that hospital?
It was St. Joe's.
No, St.
in
Joe's.
Milwaukee.
If I ever have a heart attack, and it's most likely
It
going to
was
be in
good.
Wisconsin, I will make sure that I'm at St. Joe's.
Well, but that also had
But I'm not a baby.
Right.
So
Well, it was.
I'm a kind of whiny.
You are not. But it also had to do with the type of surgery that I had. I had a cutting edge beating heart bypass surgery, so you recover quickly.
You totally went over the whole cutting edge thing.
Yeah.
That's
There's a lot to the whole story.
That's like
How
a friend
much
of mine who had a
time
heart.
do you have,
That's like a friend of mine had a heart attack. It's my godfather had a heart attack. I had just seen him for 25 years, And the first time in 25 years, when I was doing my book signing, and he came in, and it's like, hey, and I recognized him right away. He's only older and grayer and balder, but it's still Harold. And I'm like, hey, how are you? And so we're talking, and we're talking about 10, 15, 20 minutes. And then he tells me that he's the first person in the history of the world to have this special heart attack, bypass thingamajig. And I'm like, you're burying the lead, man.
I know.
I go ask you how you're doing. Most old people will say all the horrible stuff.
Right.
I asked him how he was doing. He's like, yeah, I'm okay. Well, this, I had that. Oh, yeah, I had the heart attack, and I had this very experience. I'm the first person in the world to have this deal. They wrote papers about me. They got this stuff done. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And so you had this bypass.
So I had this bypass, cutting edge. The technology didn't exist 18 months before my heart attack. They weren't really using it it was still experimental. So I was very lucky that my cardiac surgeon was brave enough to use it on me because I didn't really qualify, but he knew that was the right choice.
Well, after all the things that had happened, he probably thought, we'll keep this run going and see if the luck will hold.
Well, it was more that they delivered the girls by C-section.
Of course.
And
I don't really think you'd be able to push.
No. And they were concerned that if they thinned my blood enough to go in the heart-lung machine, that I'd just bleed.
Yeah, you're not going to clot.
So they had this other way of doing it, and it obviously worked out really well.
Obviously, because you're here today.
Right. So that was sort of another kind of twist in the story. Mm-hmm. So it gets picked up, and then we get calls from everybody.
Now what is that like? Because I can't get calls from people I know.
So
what's
weird.
It like to get? How many calls do you think you got in maybe a 2-week period?
It was a little bit longer.
Well, I know,
Probably
but
in a month. We got 30 or 40 offers to do different things,
Like Good Morning America, The Today Show, things like that?
They carry the story on Thanksgiving Day. So we didn't get that. We got the sort of more fringe freak show audience participation, Sally Jesse Raphael, Montel, those sort of things.
Not Oprah.
No.
You would love Oprah, wouldn't you? You're like, it would be all worth it if it was just for Oprah.
The holies of all holy. Yeah.
Because there's speakers out there going, oh man, if I'd only had a heart attack with twins,
right.
I'd be making a mint right now.
Well, and let me tell you, I've been pitched to Oprah any number of times.
She's like, nah, come back when she's got triplets.
Right, exactly. But we started to get all of these calls, and we had some good advice from a friend of ours that's a PR professional, and he said, you got to think about what you're going to get out of it.
Oh, so you're already strategizing ahead of time.
Well, but he was
he was telling you that you need to do this to monopolize on the very rare opportunity.
Well, no, he was actually saying, think about what it is that you want to get out of it, and if you're not getting anything out of it, don't do it.
Okay.
Or if it feels smarmy and icky,
which a lot of it probably did.
Like,
Sally Jesse Raphael would make you feel icky.
Well, and it was all like, medical freak show sort of things, and I'm like, no. I don't really want to do that. And so there were some things that we said yes to and some things that we didn't. I ended up in the National Enquirer.
Yeah, but that you didn't say yes to.
I said yes to a columnist. I didn't understand
who they were.
So I'm a lot smarter now.
Did they just misrepresent themselves?
Yeah.
Okay. I want to make sure they didn't say that I'm with the Miami Enquirer.
No, it was like
a freelancer.
Yeah. Well, I work for this sort of...
I work for a news organization.
Yeah. Exactly. And I didn't do enough research, and I was still on drugs, so give me a break. And let them come and interview, and the story itself was factual.
Right.
It was correct.
But But
it was sensationalized in a way that was just like, I am certain that I didn't say exactly what they said I said. It's not incorrect.
So a profanity-laced
former
dancer. And of course, they make it sound like you're somebody burlesque stripper.
Right. No.
That kind of thing.
It was kind of.
Do you have do you still have the article?
Yes,
do you have it framed?
It's in my clipbook.
No, you got to put that up on the wall, because now that when you're looking back, it's like that was kind of awful at the time, but looking back, that's kind of neat. Because how many people get in the National Enquirer and haven't been cheated on or have a drug addiction?
Well, and if you play the game I Never, that's a good one.
Oh yeah, you win every time.
I definitely win unless
I've never been in the National Enquirer. Sorry, I'm out. I'm out. I had a 2-page spread. How many pages did they give you?
It was just one.
Oh, it's just one.
Just one.
See, now as a speaker, you're like, I would have wanted a two-pager.
Yeah, no, really not. But the way that I found out that I was in the National Enquirer was I'm standing at the holiday party for my husband's job, and it was one of the first times
You're at the law firm. I think it was. You said your husband was a lawyer. So.
Yeah. So it was one of the first times I was out of the house.
Okay.
Yeah,
because it's Christmas time, so it's like right a couple months later.
And I think it was actually in January, so after the holidays.
That's a good law firm to having parties after the holidays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm standing in the buffet line, and somebody says, "I know you," and I'm like, "Okay." Now we've been on TV. We've been interviewed by all the local stations.
Right.
I've been in the newspaper, so I'm thinking, oh, well,
And who was the biggest? Was it Good Morning America or was it?
It was
Today Show.
Today Show.
Okay. See, I was going to say the next one was the CBS Morning News, but they're not really a big show.
But so I'm thinking, oh, well, you saw me in the newspaper, and she's like, no, that's not it. I just saw you. Where did I say? Oh, you're in the Enquirer, and I'm like, no, I'm not.
She did not just say that.
So we had to stop on the way home and find the Enquirer, and sure enough, there I am.
The walk of shame has never been performed in a grocery market before. So you looked at it, and so now you start getting all these media calls, and at some point, and I don't know about 2000, but now you'd be about a 3-day deal. No offense, but in about 3 days, you'd be old news.
It went away.
Yeah.
And then we would have little, like on their first birthday, there was some interest and that sort of thing. But what really happened that started me sort of down the path.
See, that's what my next question was, at what point did you realize, hey, I need to do something with this for good?
Right. I got sort of tired of the just exploiting the story.
Being the freak show.
Yeah, exactly. And even that night after surgery, when I'm laying in the ICU with all the tubes and stuff coming out, I knew that I'd been given this story for a reason. I just knew that there was something I was supposed to do with it, because why in the world would I have had to go through all of that unless there was a point? And it took me a while to figure out what the point was.
You could have been just training the doctors.
I could have been.
But no, you decided
But
you have the speaker ego. It's like, it's got to be about me.
Well, no, it had to be about serving. I knew that there was a purpose that I was to serve.
All these people helped you.
Right.
You had more than one person save your life. So it's like when that happens,
team.
I mean, when you can't really pinpoint one person because there's too many, that's when you got to start thinking that society's got to be something you got to look at.
So one of the things that happened early on was the American Heart Association asked me to share my story.
Oh. So they came to you.
They came to me to motivate people to participate in the Heart Walk, which is the major fundraiser for the Heart Association. And it was like a little puzzle piece sort of fit. Like, oh, aha.
This is something, I can do.
Right. I can go and tell my story, and I can swing it around to saying, look, if those research dollars weren't there, and that little piece of technology wasn't developed, I wouldn't be here. And my girls wouldn't have a mom. So, get involved, make a difference, because, every dollar makes a difference. And that's what I started doing, is telling the story to make a point. And that developed into then using my story to go and talk to legislators. And I went to Washington, D.C. and lobbied Congress on behalf of the American Heart Association on a number of different issues. And my knowledge base grew and grew and grew about heart health.
Mm-hmm.
And
you're one of the few speakers in the world that I know of. That when they say I've changed lives, you got people going, oh, I've changed lives. No, you didn't. You entertained them for an hour.
Right.
They feel excited. But you actually have done things that have saved lives in the long run. By changing laws, by getting things done, by lobbying. Because you're about to say, not really, but you have.
Well, and it's not because of what happened to me necessarily. That's the hook.
It's a byproduct?
It's the hook that makes people pay attention. But if all I did was tell my story, nothing would happen. But if I can go and have a point, if I can have an action step, if I can say, this is what you can do about it, whether it's about supporting research or it's about your own personal heart health, if I can give you an action that you could so easily do and you go and do it, that's cool. That's what makes me get up and walk out the door and
But
do
you
this.
did more than that. It's more than just speaking. The stuff that you were doing. I mean,
Right.
you didn't. Lobbying Congress is not a PR move for your speaking business.
It's not. And however, the more
It helps, but
the more I do, the more I give, and I give in very specific ways, the more I expand my knowledge base and my expertise in heart health and understanding what all that is, the better job I can do.
oh, of course. And this is not going to be aired in February. It's February right now.
Right.
And this will be aired several weeks from now. So this is like this is your month.
This is my crazy month.
And who do you mostly speak to on a regular basis?
Particularly in February, I'm speaking to women. And I do a lot of work with the American Heart Association and their Go Red for Women programs.
So you've been with them basically from the beginning, because they're the ones that asked you to
Yes.
speak first.
Right.
And how was that? What was that first time speaking like for you?
You know, I had it all written out, like in a little binder.
Did you have
Yeah.
little 8x10 cards?
Well,
whatever
I
they
had
are?
I had it on
3.5. I didn't even use
I
it
had
card
it on
anymore.
like in a little binder, so I could turn
Oh.
the pages. And I practiced, and it was so early on that like finding a dress to fit was this big deal because I still was carrying so much baby weight.
Well, you had to lose half your body weight.
Right. And I remember going and starting, and I had it all written out, and then just sort of stopped and said, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to share instead of give a speech. I'm going to have a conversation.
You jumped off the cliff.
I did, and it was great, and it was fun. And it was just like, as I said, it was like that puzzle piece just sort of fitting in like, oh, I get it.
And that was the first time. You
That
jumped
was
off
the
the cliff
first
the first time. See, I had Robert Bradford here, and great speaker.
Yeah.
We all know, and he wings it.
Yeah.
But he told me he didn't do that until at least 200.
Well,
200.
There's a difference between completely winging it and knowing where you're going and giving yourself the space to sort of get there how you're going to get
right.
there.
I mean, but you actually had the outline.
Yeah.
And so you didn't just wing it either.
No, I had put in the work.
Right, you put the work in, and so had he. But he didn't make that, oh, hey, I'm going to do this.
Well, I
right
can
off the bat.
honestly say, though.
Because I'm like that. I wing it constantly. I have to, otherwise I get bored.
And a lot of people will say, I don't understand how you can get up in front of people and speak. When I started speaking, I was on a drug called a beta blocker.
Oh, yeah.
Which is what they give to people when they're afraid to do public speaking.
Really?
Yes.
Man, I'm not afraid of public speaking, but I know lots of people who are. I should be like a dealer, a beta blocker.
Right. So it just sort of mutes everything and blocks your adrenaline response. So that's how I spoke taking that for like 4 years. So the first time I spoke after coming off the drug, I'm like, what the heck? My knees are shaking, my heart's pounding. I'm like, what the heck? And I had been doing it long enough so that my mouth is on automatic pilot. Like I'm doing the speech, and my head is like, what the heck? I just don't know what's going on. And that's gotten better over time, and I've learned how to like manage it. But I'm like, well, probably that first 4 years, I had a little help.
I find it hilarious because as a performer stand-up, usually it's in the middle of their career where they spend 4 years on drugs to make themselves perform better. So the juxtaposition is just amazing. But you've been able to, create a business that you can give back. But how do you model your business? What are the things that you do? Because there is a niche.
Yes.
That is a niche. I have no niche. I'm nicheless.
Well,
but that's not a good thing. But yours is. But
it's always something in motion because, I started not niched, and then found that if I was very specific, if I said I speak on women's heart health, that people got what I did. And I was hireable. Mm-hmm. Like, I was a match. Like, aha, you're having this kind of event. This is what I do. I'm a perfect match. But now as I'm farther into it and my expertise has grown and I want to expand.
You're making more connections with different topics.
Right. Now I start getting well, can't you do a program for men and women? And I'm like, sure I could.
Do the guys have to be there?
No, I like actually speaking to a mixed gender audience. It's a different experience.
I like talking to the women because they don't find me intimidating, and so when I talk to them and I can make fun of myself and I'm making fun of them, they don't feel threatened or I certainly don't have anybody trying to hit on me after the show. But I guess there's no threat because I'm kind of an alpha personality, but I'm not an alpha male.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of a benefit. So I'm assuming that women just love you because they don't find you threatening either.
You know what's funny though is
not that I'm a woman.
I'm a big believer of addressing the elephant in the room.
Oh yeah.
So as you said, I am a skinny person. So if I go up and speak about heart health, predominantly I'm speaking to a room full of overweight women.
As we discussed earlier, the average weight, you are definitely below that.
So I have to go through what is that skinny chick going to tell me about my life? And I actually go through this whole thing about sort of calling myself out and reminding them that I gained 80 pounds and that it took a while for it to come off. And I have to sort of get to the place where they'll hear me and not dismiss me as that skinny chick.
Right. It's almost sort of like if you were a younger speaker, because I started speaking very young. It's just like, and it's not. And we talked this with Robert Bradford. So you and Robert Bradford have a lot in common.
Oh, we should get him.
You should. He's a strategy guy. He could probably, between the two of you could probably make $1 million and save the world.
There you go.
But he was talking about, and I completely Robert Bradford always screws me up when I'm thinking about him. But we'll just move on because I had a point about something.
We'll come back to
it. You're talking about,
addressing the elephant in the room.
And like I said, I'll just move on because that one was awful. Last thing, and I'll edit all that out because that was, and maybe not. Maybe I won't edit that out. Maybe that'll be a surprise for the person who's actually lasted long enough to listen to me.
There you go. Send us an email and tell us that you listened this long. Yeah,
I'm gonna put that in the intro. There's a horrible surprise at the 39 minute. At minute 39.
That long.
But,
hey, if they email, I'll send them a book.
Hey, there you go.
There you go.
We got a free book. And speaking of that, you wrote a book.
I've written several.
Oh, how many have you written? Because I know of the one.
4.
Why don't I know the other 3?
2 of them are in ebook.
Okay, that's why. I'm not an ebook person yet.
Yep.
So that's.
And one I am considering whether or not I'm reprinting.
Okay.
So,
and then the other one is the hardcore.
Busy Woman's Guide to the Healthy Heart.
That's the one.
Yep.
And where can they get that?
They can get it on my website. If they go to busywomansguide.com, they can go and find it right there.
Well, I want to thank you for being here because I know we've got an event after this.
Yes.
and we're starving. So I think let's go eat.
All right, sounds good.
Well, that's our show for you this week. I did have a meltdown there at the 39-minute mark. If you want to email me, Craig at speakercraigprice.com. Not only will I send you my book, Eliz has volunteered to send you her book as well. So again, that's Craig at speakercraigprice.com. Go to realitycheckpodcast.com to sign up for the newsletter, get updates. You can sign up for the RSS feed and go to iTunes. Everything's there. See you next week.